Before there was a nation, before there was a homeland, there was a promise. And one man chosen to finally make it real. His name was Joshua, son of Nun, from the tribe of Ephraim, and he had spent his entire life in the shadow of the greatest leader the world had ever known. Moses was gone. The man who had parted the Red Sea, who had spoken face to face with God, who had carried an entire nation on his shoulders, was dead. The Israelites were camped beside the Jordan River, staring across the water at a land they had been waiting 40 years to enter. 40 years of wandering, 40 years of waiting, and now it was right there. And then God spoke to Joshua, not in whispers, not in riddles, directly, boldly. He said, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people, get ready to cross the Jordan River." God made Joshua a promise that would echo across thousands of years. "I will give you every place where you set your foot. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life." But there was a condition. God told Joshua to be strong and courageous, not once, not twice, but 3 times, because courage would not come naturally. It would have to be chosen. Joshua rallied the people immediately. He gave clear, direct orders. "Prepare your supplies. In 3 days we cross. No hesitation, no meetings, no second guessing." A new era had begun. Before the crossing, Joshua sent 2 spies into the city of Jericho, the first great fortress standing between Israel and the Promised Land. "Get in, look around, come back alive." Inside Jericho, they found shelter with a woman named Rahab. She ran an inn near the city wall, and she made a decision that would change everything for her and her family. Rahab had heard everything: the stories of the Red Sea, the defeats of Egypt, the power of Israel's God, and she believed what her own city's leaders refused to admit: that God had already given this land to Israel. She hid the spies on her rooftop beneath stalks of flax, lied to the soldiers who came searching, and then helped the men escape by lowering them down the city wall with a rope. Before they left, the spies made her a promise: "Tie a scarlet cord in this window. Keep your family inside when we return, and you will be spared." That red cord became her symbol of salvation. The spies returned to Joshua and gave their report. "The people of Canaan are terrified. Their hearts have melted. The land is ours. God has already gone ahead of us." 3 days later, Joshua gave the signal. The Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest carrying God's presence, would lead the way. When the priests' feet touched the water, something impossible would happen. The moment the priests stepped into the Jordan, the river stopped flowing. The waters piled up upstream like a wall, and the riverbed went dry. Thousands of people crossed on solid ground. God told Joshua to take 12 stones from the middle of the riverbed, 1 for each tribe, and stack them on the western bank, so that future generations would ask, "What happened here?" And the answer would always be, "God made a way." Once everyone crossed, the priests carrying the ark stepped out of the riverbed, and immediately the Jordan flooded back, rushing and roaring as if nothing had happened. Except everything had happened. News spread fast. The kings of Canaan heard what had happened at the Jordan, and the Bible records something stunning. Their hearts melted. Their courage failed, because they knew something beyond human was moving. Joshua and the Israelites camped at a place called Gilgal, right at the edge of Canaan. They performed circumcision as God commanded, marking the new generation as His covenant people. Then they celebrated Passover for the first time in the Promised Land. And then the manna stopped. For 40 years in the desert, God had rained food from heaven every single morning. But the day after Passover, it stopped. Because now they were eating from the land God had given them. Then something strange happened. Joshua was near Jericho when he looked up and saw a man standing before him, sword drawn. Joshua walked straight up to him and said, "Are you for us or against us?" The figure said, "Neither. I am the commander of the Lord's army." And Joshua fell face down on the ground immediately. This was no ordinary soldier, this was a divine warrior. And his message was clear: Take off your sandals, this ground is holy. Now came the moment the entire journey had been building toward. Jericho. The city stood massive and impenetrable. Thick double walls, iron gates, professional soldiers, no weakness visible from the outside. This should have been impossible. God gave Joshua the strangest battle plan in military history. No siege equipment, no attack formations, don't battering rams. Just march around the city once a day for 6 days, 7 priests blowing ram's horn trumpets, and stay completely silent. For 6 days they marched, and for 6 days, nothing happened. The soldiers of Jericho watched from the walls. Maybe they laughed. Maybe they were confused. But on the 7th day, everything changed. On the 7th day, they rose at dawn and marched around the city 7 times. 7 circuits. Then the priests blew the horns, and Joshua shouted, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." And the walls came down, not crumbled slowly, not breached by soldiers. The walls of Jericho collapsed completely, all at once. The greatest fortress in Canaan fell not by human strength, but by obedience to an impossible command. The Israelites charged straight in. Every man went straight ahead. The city was taken. But Joshua remembered his promise, and Rahab and every member of her family were brought out safely, exactly as the spies had sworn. But not everything went smoothly. A man named Achan secretly stole treasures from Jericho that God had commanded be kept sacred. Silver, gold, a beautiful robe. He buried them under his tent, and he thought no one saw. The consequences were swift and devastating. When Israel next attacked the small city of Ai, they were routed. 36 soldiers died. The army fled in fear, and Joshua fell on his face before God. Why? What happened? God told Joshua plainly, "Israel has sinned. Someone has stolen what was set apart for me. I will not be with you anymore until you deal with this." The defeated Ai was not a military failure. It was a spiritual one. Through a process of casting lots, tribe by tribe, clan by clan, family by family, Achan was identified. Confronted, he confessed everything. "I saw the robe. I wanted it. I took it." That sequence, see, want, take, has been humanity's problem from the very beginning. Achan and his household were judged, and the stolen items were destroyed. It was devastating. But the camp was cleansed, and God told Joshua, "Get up. Take the whole army. Go up to Ai. This time, I am with you." This time, Joshua used strategy, an ambush. He sent soldiers to hide behind the city under cover of night, then led a smaller force toward the front gate. When Ai's soldiers came out to fight, the hidden troops struck from behind. It worked. The city fell. And God told Joshua to do something powerful. "Stretch out your javelin toward Ai. Hold it there. Don't lower it until the battle is finished." It was an echo of Moses holding his staff over the Red Sea. After Ai, Joshua led the people to Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, 2 mountains that face each other like an amphitheater, and read the entire law of Moses aloud. Every word, every blessing, every warning. To everyone, men, women, children, foreigners living among them. Word of Israel's victories spread, and the Gibeonites, a nearby people, came up with a clever deception. They disguised themselves as travelers from a distant land, worn out sandals, moldy bread, cracked wineskins, and asked Joshua to make a peace treaty. Joshua and the leaders made the treaty without asking God. And 3 days later, they discovered the truth. The Gibeonites lived just next door. They had been completely deceived. But the oath had been sworn in the name of the Lord, and it could not be broken. The Gibeonites became servants, woodcutters and water carriers, for Israel. But their lives were spared. An oath made in God's name meant something, even when it was costly, even when it was inconvenient. Then 5 Canaanite kings formed an alliance and attacked Gibeon, specifically because Gibeon had made peace with Israel. Gibeon sent urgent word to Joshua, "Don't abandon us. Come quickly. Help us." Joshua marched his entire army through the night. All night. to reach Gibeon by morning. No sleep, no hesitation. He had made a promise, and he was going to keep it. They surprised the enemy completely. The battle was overwhelming. God himself fought for Israel, throwing the enemy into confusion and then raining down massive hailstones on the retreating armies. More soldiers died from the hail than from Israelite swords. God was at war. And then Joshua did something that has never happened before or since in all of recorded history. He prayed, and the sun stopped moving. He needed more daylight to finish the battle, and God gave it to him. The sun stood still, and the moon stayed put, for about a full day. The Bible says there has been no day like it before or since, a day when God listened to the voice of a man. Because God was fighting for Israel. The 5 kings who had led the attack were captured hiding in a cave at Makkedah. Joshua had them brought out. His commanders placed their feet on the necks of the kings, a symbolic act of complete victory. And Joshua said, "This is what God will do to all your enemies." With the southern campaign won, Joshua turned north. A massive coalition of Canaanite kings gathered by the waters of Merom. More soldiers, more horses, more chariots than Israel had ever faced. And God said, "Do not be afraid of them." Joshua struck suddenly, the element of surprise. He hamstrung the enemy horses, removing their military advantage, and burned their chariots, the most advanced weapons of the ancient world, neutralized in a single campaign. City after city fell. The Bible summarizes it with remarkable economy. Joshua took the entire land exactly as God had commanded Moses. He left nothing undone of all that God commanded. 31 kings defeated. The land had rest from war. Then came the task of dividing the land, tribe by tribe, boundary by boundary. Each of the 12 tribes received their inheritance, the fulfillment of promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob centuries before. Words had become geography. Joshua himself received his inheritance last, a city in the hill country of Ephraim that he asked for and rebuilt. The leader who gave everything to everyone else finally received something for himself. And it was everything he needed. Years passed. Joshua grew old. And when the time came, he called all of Israel together. The elders, the leaders, the judges, the officials, everyone. He had something to say, something they needed to hear before he was gone. He reminded them of everything, every battle, every miracle, every time God had shown up when the situation looked impossible. He didn't let them drift into comfortable amnesia. Remember what God did. Remember where you came from. Remember who brought you here. And then he gave them a choice, a real choice, not a formality, not a ceremony. He said, "Choose today whom you will serve. The gods your ancestors worshipped across the river? The gods of the Amorites in this land? Choose. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." The people answered with one voice, "Far be it from us to forsake the Lord. We will serve the Lord our God and obey him." Joshua made a covenant with them that day, wrote it in the book of the law of God, and set up a large stone as a witness. And then Joshua son of Nun, servant of the Lord, died. He was 110 years old. They buried him in the land of his inheritance, the very hill country he had asked for and received. He died where he belonged. The Bible adds one more detail about Joshua's generation. All the days of Joshua, and all the days of the elders who outlived him, Israel served the Lord. A whole generation remained faithful because of what they had witnessed. He didn't have Moses' miracles. He didn't have Moses' history. He had a command to be strong and courageous, and he chose, every single day, to be exactly that. That was enough. That was more than enough. He didn't have Moses' miracles. He didn't have Moses' history. He had a command to be strong and courageous, and he chose, every single day, to be exactly that. That was enough. That was more than enough. The walls came down. The river parted. The sun stood still. Not because Joshua was the strongest, or the wisest, or the most impressive leader, but because he showed up every day, did what God said, and refused to quit. That is the story of Joshua. There is a kind of power the world never sees coming. Not the power of armies, not the power of strategy, not the power of the strongest man in the room. It is the power of a person who simply does what God says, even when it looks completely foolish to everyone watching.